Okay, good afternoon, brothers and sisters. I had a lot of questions and comments about Katy Perry's guided meditation and me calling it blasphemous. And what I'm talking about here is there is something that has happened in what's called the New Age community. And not everything in the New Age community is bad or wrong, but what true spirituality is where somebody sacrifices their material life. That means that they give up their personal resources, their life's energy. They sacrifice their needs and often live difficult lives in order to advance spiritually. And so instead of having a happy, materialistic life, they have a difficult life, but they make leaps and bounds in the spiritual realm of their experience. You see this with saints in all religious traditions, spiritual people who gave of themselves and did God's work, suffered, in some cases were tortured and even killed, and were mistreated by either the people they were serving, turned on them, betrayed them. You see this, and they gave of themselves, even at the cost of their own comfort and their own material comforts and things. They gave their life's energy to other people, made the world a better place, and they lived difficult lives. And the more they advance on the spiritual realm of consciousness, the realm of existence, their soul advanced, the more problems they took on of other people's problems, world's problems, and things like this, sufferings they took on themselves. You see this over and over as a theme in the lives. It's part of a narrative in the spiritual lives of people. And then you have a Western modality where people sacrifice their soul energy, their soul's path, literally selling their soul to the devil or figuratively selling their soul to the devil in order to have a better material life. So they suffer spiritual bondage. They benefit in the material world. They become rich, famous, powerful. They have big egos, and they have good, pleasurable lives for the most part. But often they're lonely and these types of things. They feel disconnected. But they have money, power, position, fame, fortune. On a spiritual level, they fall. They fall down to lower levels of existence. And so they suffer on a spiritual level, but have good material lives. Now, there's things about people's diet, like, for example, one of the reasons why there's vegetarians in India, it's good spiritually to be a vegetarian. It's subtle food. You can meditate better. You can connect to God better. You have a more subtle existence. Meat has a very gross vibrational energy. But if you want to succeed in the material world, you want to be a big, strong athlete, or you want to have physical strength, or even brain development in terms of the proteins that you get. You look at the meat-eating animals. They're always more physical. They're always more craftier. They have superior brain development than the herd animals that survive mostly on grass and leaves and these types of things. And so there is a trade-off in terms of your diet, in terms of a culture's orientation towards life. So if you could look at the white people, the European people, people of America, the Western people of both colors, of all races, people growing up as Americans, because of our orientation towards life, because of our diets, because of a meat-eating diet, because of the abundance of fresh water and other things, you see that Americans are very big physically and have great brain capabilities and are good at inventing things and solving problems and things like this, inventions and weaponry and warfare. And so that's what you see in front. We're very materialistic in the West. And then you see some of these Eastern cultures, specifically India. In fact, India is becoming more materialistic, and so are these Eastern countries, where there isn't the same intellectual development, there isn't the same predisposition towards materiality, or there used to not be that. India specifically, again, but these other countries, there's ancient presence that you go there. You feel the maturity of the country, and there's wisdom, and there's the lifestyle is more generous and family oriented and things like this. and there isn't a rat race. The pace is slower, and things like this used to be like that. Everything is now every country's now trying to be like America. It's a template that's being rolled out all around the world. But because of this orientation of the West to turn everything to one's material life, their ego, into benefit, that's what we've grown up here with in America. And in ancient cultures, and even here in America when the Aboriginal native Indians lived here, there wasn't that. There was a balance between material life and spiritual life. And so that's completely out of sync. So what you have often happening in the New Age community, you have people that go to India or and they become Buddhists, they go to Tibet or some of these Asian countries or whatever, and take ancient practices that are ancient disciplines, and there's no more ancient discipline than real yoga, and not the kind of yoga. We think of yoga as stretching and exercises, and that's hatha yoga. But there's many forms of yoga that were involved in meditating with the yoking, the union with the God, and meditating and connecting with God that exists in your heart. And what they do is they take these practices, these Western people, Americans, and they change them, even though they're ancient disciplines, without really understanding the practices, and because of egotistical desire to become like these pseudo-gurus. And this is the kind of person that I'm talking about with Katy Perry. They have big egos, and they want to be gurus. And they take these practices and they tell you how it's going to benefit your material life, these spiritual practices, these ancient spiritual disciplines. So there's nothing wrong with incense. There's nothing wrong with essential oils. There's nothing wrong with comforts and even wealth when there's a balance, when you have a spiritual life and you have a material life. Everyone should have balance. It's one of the teachings of the heartfulness spiritual practice that I do. It's that you need a material wing and a spiritual wing, because too often in these ancient traditions, you had guys meditating 18 hours a day, and their bodies would get skinny and they would atrophy. They did nothing for society. They contributed nothing for society, but they made huge advancements spiritually because they used all their life's energy on one thing. And so the teachings of the system that I do is that you have to have a material life, family, you have to contribute something to the material world, towards your society, but also spend some time connecting with God in a deep level where you go away from the sensory world. So when you meditate and you burn incense, it stimulates certainly your smell, your sense of smell, but even the condition when people play music or there's somebody speaking, they do a guided meditation, it pulls you away from the part of you that's God. Instead of connecting with your soul, connecting with divine energy by going deep inside of your internal world, it pulls you out to your sensory world. And when people have big egos like Katy Perry, this whole thing she's doing is narcissistic, and this woman who's meditating with her, doing these guided meditations, is all based in ego. This woman wants to be a guru. She's using this opportunity with Katy Perry to bring in young people. Katy Perry's promoting her, and she's doing guided meditations. When someone's in a meditative state, it's okay if the person that's guiding them is a specific thing. Even hypnosis can be something that's beneficial to people, even though hypnosis is a much more forceful type of activity than meditating. But when you're in a meditative state, you're in a suggestible state. So anybody talking to you, again, if it's a relaxation technique or it's a specific technique, that's great. But the best form of meditation is where you have a heartfelt meditation where you connect to God and you feel God's love. And when people's egos are involved and someone's in a vulnerable, open state, they're meditating, then the person who is guiding them will often impose their will on the other person. This is, again, similar to hypnosis. And they are, again, wanting to be something, egotistical, wanting to be a guru. Because being a guru is something that you shouldn't want to be. Like, it's something that you become a good spiritual aspirant and God starts sending you people and you serve them through God. You're serving God because that's what you're you're like a slave to God, and these people come, God's sending them to you, so you serve them, but it isn't to your benefit. It isn't an egotistical thing. It doesn't tell you how great you are. You take a humble role, and that's being a true guru. It's a sacrificial role. Somebody sacrificing themselves to do God's work, their life's energy, their time and energy, and things like this. Maybe they'd like to go do something else, but people come and they need services, so the person serves these people because it's what they're supposed to do. And so true gurudom is service. But you have these Western people with big egos that read some ancient spiritual texts and find some spiritual disciplines and twist them around so that they can become, big ego guru type people. And this is what I was saying about this woman. And so it is, and then people look at this thinking this is true spirituality. Again, they're not honoring the tradition. This happened in Arizona like last year, a couple of years ago. And there was a guy, and he was this fake New Age guru. And he created these giant sweat lodges in the Native American tradition where they would have these very hot rocks with, like as a sauna that people go in to spiritually cleanse themselves. And it's also a physical thing. And the sweat lodge wasn't manufactured correctly, and there's too many people in there, and the guy didn't honor the traditions in which this was started. It was a big money-making thing. And people wanted to leave and get out of the sweat lodge, and they were suffering, and he made them stay. They had like people like bouncers at the door pushing back people back in, and some people died because they overheated, and it was god awful conditions. A lot of people suffered physically. Guy was sued and all these things. You see ashrams where there was an ashram in Massachusetts about 20 years ago, and one of my friends went up there. It was a hatha yoga meditation, hatha yoga where they did physical poses and these types of things. What most people think of as yoga. And the guru had a fall of some sort or another. He became a sexual deviant, and he was there was just a lot of sexual energy there. And like I said, one of my buddies went up there, and he said, yeah, he saw this there when he was there. Like a year later, there was a big scandal, and this guy was sleeping with young women, like 16, 17-year-old women. He was like 70 years old or something, and these types of things. So oftentimes when people seek out to be a guru, to be sort of a celebrity or whatever, a religious figure, a cult leader, and these types of things, well, it always ends badly because God and ego don't mix. And so this is what I was making reference to in terms of the Katy Perry thing. Everything, if it's done for the right reason, and there are good intentions and things, and people's egos aren't a part of it, and people are doing something in terms of service. You look at this thing that Katy Perry's doing. Well, the number one thing is they're promoting this spy agenda, this Big Brother agenda, this Illuminati agenda, and people are seeing this idea of being videotaped 100% of the time, which is already in the works, this spy network, extensive spy network. Katy Perry's promoting that. She's promoting her god-awful album, and then all of these ideas, social ideas about things that we've seen with a lot of her videos, different kinds of psychological operations and things that she's promoting. And so when you look at all these things, again, these are all big ego things. And of course she's going to find a spiritual person, a so-called spiritual person that is going to present spirituality as something to boost your ego and help you function. Because a lot of these people, they have trouble sleeping, they have anxiety, they have all these psychological issues, and then they develop these practices to help these people cope instead of facing the fact that their lives, they're living lives that their souls don't agree with. Their souls are not in agreement with this type of lifestyle. You see this with so many of these types of people. And you've had this in your life where you're behaving in a way that you're just lost. You've lost your way, and you have trouble functioning in the world. You might have physical issues, and your soul isn't behind your energy level, things like this. And so you start saying to yourself, I got to make some changes. There's something wrong here. But these people are so far, they've sold their souls to the devil, both literally and metaphorically, in such a way that they're desensitized to what their soul wants. And so they look for some sort of, they look for drugs or alcohol or something to help them cope with, and these types of pseudo-spiritual New Age type practices to cope with wrong living. So I just want to clarify those things. As Paul Romano reporting from the apocalypse. Everybody have a wonderful night and a good day tomorrow.